Up to 60% of all mechanical failures in industry can be attributed to some form of lubrication failure or lack of attention. And a carefully conducted lubrication survey is essential to the success of the program to prevent these failures. When we're going through the presentation, when someone says a lube survey or lubrication survey, it can mean many different things. And we're going to talk about some of the examples here. And what I'm referring to ultimately in this presentation is also laid out here. The components of a complete survey, what the dedication and involvement of a company when they head down this road. Lubrication a survey that can then be taken on and put into a maintenance program that actually sends out lube routes, orders product, controls stores and warehouse.
I can hear it. I can't see it.
Can someone not hear me? Sorry?
I can hear you fine, Lauren.
I don't know. I heard a comment there, something I can't hear it. Anyway. And then we'll talk at the end, 3 options for a complete lube survey program and what really can be useful as opposed to a cross-reference table or something else that may be referred to as a lubrication survey. Cost of lubrication minor compared to the potential consequence of poor lubrication practices. Benefit of a lubrication survey and lubrication management. Okay. Benefit of lubrication survey and lubrication management include lower equipment maintenance costs, longer equipment life, more efficient, reliable equipment, reduction in unscheduled downtime due to lubrication-related equipment failures. Lower lubrication costs, increased effectiveness and efficiency of lubrication staff, as the education is also an important part of a complete survey. It identifies gaps in understanding and gaps in the types of lubricants that are available. And Jim, in the next presentation, is going to talk about some other areas that could be incorporated into a complete survey and lubrication management program. And we come down to also understanding the health and safety, environmental awareness, and how we manage and dispose of lubricants after they've had their useful life. It can mean various things. First one, sometimes a lube survey is nothing more than a cross-reference table. Perhaps when you're changing lubricant suppliers or a new type of lubricant has come out, often provided as a value added by a lubrication supplier. Usually it's completed infrequently, perhaps once. That's what we mean by infrequently. And it's nothing more than that. But that's not really what we're going to talk about here when we talk about lubrication survey and lubrication program. Then there's something called a lubrication audit, which is more intensive. It's conducted by knowledgeable lubricant supplier personnel, knowledgeable staff, if you happen to have someone that's a tribologist or a knowledgeable maintenance engineer, or a third-party lubrication specialist, I guess, such as myself, that would put a program together for an identified plant. Identifies opportunities for improvement as well, not just a list of equipment and their lubrication points and the lubrication that goes into that application. And it's conducted once as a special project. Sometimes there is an update or a rescheduling of an update included, but more often than not, this again is a one-time event. You go through, you look at the plant. Many times it's when a new operation is opening up, they want to have a baseline, and that's where this would come in. What we're going to talk about more in depth, it comes into what I'm going to call an equipment lubrication survey and beyond. So lubrication data is recorded for all points and all equipment. You actually identify the volume of lubricant, the frequency, the change out, and try to capture all of that information so that it is more useful on a day-to-day basis, little more than just a once walkthrough. Conducted by knowledgeable, and I say knowledgeable because many times the lubrication is left to a junior person, not that there's anything missing there, but they don't have the background or the understanding of the things that need to be captured that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So you need a knowledgeable lubricant supplier or knowledgeable, again, in-house maintenance engineer, third-party specialist. These are routinely updated. If they're not captured on an immediate basis, daily when there's a change, then it's captured at some basis monthly or weekly. And usually it's installed on a plant software or plant program so that it can be easily accessed by anyone that needs to know. Taking a little step further along that path that was identified, a plant and process equipment survey. You do the complete survey, you capture accurate data, actually doing calculations and measurements of all lubricated assets. Some surveys actually include power doors, things that others wouldn't even think of, but they're important because they are lubricated, and you do have to have the doors open to take supplies or ship things out. But some points have been made in the past that this is just too extensive. In reality, it's not, because that is part of the operation. Excuse me. Take it. When properly implemented, all equipment will receive the correct lubrication, proper frequency, in the correct amount, and eliminates lube-related failures because it has captured everything. The survey data then is, you take the data from the survey, it doesn't become just a one-time database thrown in a drawer. It's referred to infrequently. It is actually then input into the computer. If it wasn't input at the time of the creation, it is certainly part of the program. It'll provide the routines such as sample schedules, gear inspections, data that's captured from suggestions for improvement, temperature changes, changing out, make a recommendation to go to a synthetic lubricant for more energy savings or lower temperature operations. Those things are captured and actually put into the system for immediate use. An ongoing, and it doesn't stop there. The next level would be an ongoing lubrication maintenance program that you compile the survey, everything up to the point that we've discussed here, and put it into action. That's where I say the rubber meets the road, and you're actually using it on a daily basis. You document lubrication and maintenance practices. You identify the gaps, and then you recycle to close those gaps. It's one thing to say, okay, we know that a piece of equipment is going to break down every 27 days, and we put that in the budget. But do we need to put up with that, or is there a solution? And then you capture that opportunity. Someone, a team or an individual, then has the responsibility to identify a solution, and then they circle back with the results. And you find that perhaps you no longer have that breakdown. You're now getting a year or two in that particular application. Best lubrication and maintenance practices are captured from various sources that are out there and then input in your system. You can go to Noria or others and take a learning and put it in the system, and that will help reduce gaps and add to that goal of long life, reduced cost. It's used for continuous improvement. Again, going back to my example of metrics, not putting up with something that is a continuous failure and finding a solution, measuring that change, and you've closed the gap. You've now captured a savings in the system, and you could even go so far as to document the savings, and buy a pizza at lunch or something to celebrate success. And it is important, we talk about that, to celebrate the successes that a program like this is going to bring in, because everyone works hard. And when I talk about this, when we go into the system, everyone works hard. Everyone has come to an understanding of how to make their plant, their job, their role important, and to drive the success of the company. And in this day and age, it's becoming very difficult with fewer people. So they need that feedback. And when we're all working from afar right now, COVID-19, that even makes it even more important that we celebrate improved metrics. Ongoing training is identified, and the training needs to be implemented to refresh and to generate new learnings. Assigned lubrication specialist. It's not just a job that's left to the sidelines or to what someone may decide to pick up. It needs to be assigned as a responsibility. You need to focus, and you need to ensure the maintenance times and resources are used to maximize the equipment life, maximize the operation performance. How do we start? Okay, so we've talked about what a lubrication survey can be. We've gone from a simple crossover sheet or a crossover database all the way to understanding the full operation of the plant. But we need to start with the very basics, and that's capturing the information, identify the equipment and the needs. So you want to choose the type of lubrication survey your operation. Oh, sorry, Ken, you had, there's a comment there and it's gone. Bashad, can those comments come back so that I'm able to respond?
Okay, I will take care of that. You continue.
Okay, yeah, sorry, it just pops up for a second, so I wasn't able to read it to respond.
Yeah,
you need to
go ahead.
Okay, you need to choose the type of lubrication survey that you're actually heading down the road for, and hopefully you're going to invest time and effort and make it a meaningful part of the operation. Then you identify personnel to lead the project. Again, as I say, someone needs to be identified, or a group needs to be identified with the responsibility, so that it's not just left as a random side job. The focus to capture the benefits need to be someone's responsibility. And hiring of outside resources. Sometimes we don't have the expertise in plants and in operations, and we need to say, okay, I'm going to take a one-time project or an ongoing project and hire outside resources. And that may be someone that's retired and bring them back for a special project. It may be hiring someone like Enron, like myself, or going to your lubricant supplier and asking them for assistance. Include all staff in the presentation of the plan and encourage them to make suggestions. Many times I've come on site and I've been involved in lubrication survey, and in this day and age, people become fearful and concerned for their job, and they think that this is an assessment, it's a time and motion study, and they're going to be somehow affected, lose their job, have reduced responsibility, no chances for career development. So we need to include all parties, all staff in the operation, not just the lubrication guy or the maintenance guy or whomever. Very important. And encourage them to make suggestions, because often someone will know of a little issue in an operation that they have been putting a Band-Aid on, and no one else. That person will go off into a new responsibility, and now that becomes a big issue because they didn't know it existed. Then we go into data collection. And actually, this is when we're starting the survey, what you're going to actually be involved with. And you need to either use Android, iPad, laptop. In the past, we would have little clipboards with flip charts on. Hopefully, we can move a step beyond that, and the data input will become instantaneous or captured instantaneously. The key thing that I put in here is include protective cases and safety straps. You don't want iPads and iPhones and things falling into equipment. In some operations, they actually won't let you wear hard hats for that because paper mills, the hard hat can actually fall into the equipment. A little hard on the safety issues, but you understand from a greater company issue that a plastic or polymer-based hard hat is actually going to cause problems if it falls into a roll. Transfer and save the data. This is a key point. You've collected the data in real time. You need to save it somewhere other than on the iPad or the laptop or the Android tablet, because you don't want to lose weeks, days of work. I think I mentioned loop survey, lubrication survey and collection can take many weeks. My very first one was 17 weeks. And the story went along with that as a gentleman had been, just take a little side here, had been told at 8 o'clock in the morning, no, I'll get it right. At 10 o'clock in the morning, he was told that he would be retiring, didn't really want to retire. And he took all of the records, they're all paper files, OEM documents, drawings, everything. And it was a paper company. And he threw it in a digester. So there were no records. And I was brought in as the lubricant supplier, and I had to call OEMs and rebuild, talk to the engineering department, have drawings redone, and it took 17 weeks. And we rebuilt everything from scratch. That's going way back. But interesting point was they actually hired that gentleman back on to be my assistant in the development of the work. So he got what he wanted, long-term job. Okay, so we've captured the data and kept it in real time. You need infrared temperature gun or some form of temperature capturing equipment, flashlight with safety strap, sample thief. So you've got to take some samples. You have to do some investigation. If you're looking at some piece of equipment, you want to know what the baseline is. Anyway, bottles and labels. Some operations, we actually go as far as looking at leaks and where the leaks come from with illuminating equipment. Lint-free rags, because you're going to be down there in the grease, the oil, and you need to be prepared to wipe things off. Look at the boilerplate or the nameplate on the equipment. Oftentimes it has the lubricant or the suggested original lubricant or frequency on the plate. You need to clean them off, have a look at them. Camera. In this day and age, our smartphone and tablets have cameras. Put a safety strap on it. Make sure the operations allow photographs. And they understand, they will usually allow photography as long as they understand it's in-house for their use and what the outcome will be. And energy, capture the energy data in the system. So we've got our equipment together. We know what our commitment is going to be. Now we're going to set down a logical sequence of the equipment for the particular manufacturing process or plant. Often process diagrams will help us understand what the correct flow should be, rather than historically it's been hither and yon and do electric motors on one cycle and you capture your bearings on another cycle. You understand the flow, the equipment, and if there's a particular in-house nomenclature, it helps to capture that, put it in the system so that when you're talking to industry personnel, you also know what that particular plant's in-house nomenclature is, so both parties learn in that case. List your equipment by name, asset number, process description, and your lubrication. Access the reference and support materials. Go into the equipment history. This is where you're going to capture what your failure points have been and where you should put some concerted effort when you're going through the cycle on the documenting of the equipment, the type of lubrication that goes into that equipment. You'll know the history. Used computerized maintenance management systems. If most plants have those for maintenance, they may not have implemented the lubrication package or part of that equipment, but this is a good time to turn that on and help go forward with the savings. Paper copy, plant maintenance files are still useful. You open the file cabinets and you find where the issues have been. You can capture those and you're able to go forward now with the conversion to an electronic or documented. OEM manuals. The old original manual might be there. The equipment might be 15, 20 years old, and things have changed, but you get the baseline, you get the understanding, and then that's part of that development of a full data package. And then a survey, a physical survey of the plant, looking at the equipment, okay, and knowing exactly where it's standing, knowing exactly how it was supposed to have flown originally. Typical information that you're going to capture and that you're going to put out in the lube survey, no matter what end step or option we're going to use, you've got to still have all of this in the basic survey. So you've got to get the lube route. What is the route going to be? What has it been? And include the person responsible. You need to know the type of equipment, drivers, electric motor bearings, what type of equipment, how is it powered? You've got electric motors, you've got internal combustion engines, you've got some type of turbine or hydraulic system, or there's still a few steam-driven systems out there, but not too many. And you have to capture that to understand the background of what's going to drive the equipment. The type of couplings, and couplings do need relubrication. Some need replacement, whether it needs relubrication or not, but still they need to be included in the process. Gearbox reducer or some kind of force multiplier or reducer. And capture all moving parts, bearings, pivots, slideways, anything that moves that should have lubricant or is lube for life should be captured. And often for convenience, you need to list all the lubricants that are currently in the plant, in the operation, even if it's one hidden away somewhere that someone uses for a special application. Capture it. Develop a table of logical abbreviations. They need to be something that is recognizable when you're doing the survey. It may be implemented later or may not, but logical abbreviations do help in the process, but it doesn't get lost. So if you have some type of EP2 grease with a certain viscosity, then you come up with, say, a 220 viscosity, you can have grease, have a G EP 220. That might make sense, something of that nature. List the methods of application, whether it's a drip boiler or whether it's an automatic greasing system. Those should be listed in the applications that can be chosen and implemented. List the service and change frequency. Note problems, concerns, and recent changes. Makes lots of notes. Capture what the suggestions and the comments and the complaints. Yes, complaints as well, because those complaints, those comments are usually based on history, usually based on a concern, and they need to be captured so that when you're doing the review later and building the final survey, it's going to be fully meaningful. There's not going to be a Band-Aid solution somewhere that's not part of the whole maintenance manual, maintenance program. Excuse me. Ask questions and record. Ask questions and record current performance, current operation, OEM recommendations, current lubricant in use, any lubricants that are being tested, or processes that are being tested. maintenance frequency, lubrication intervals, quantities applied, leakage issues. Understand the leakage. If you have hydraulic systems that have foaming out a breather, and that's actually a reduction in or a volume of lubricant that has to be topped up, you need to capture that. These things shouldn't be happening, and the process, the end result of this process, is to capture that savings. Oil drain intervals, capture as well what's the lubricant or how the lubricant is disposed of. Application methods, filters that are used and their particular beta ratio, used oil analysis, and what the results of the analysis is. Don't just take an analysis and record the data, understand the meaning of the data. Is there a potential failure? Is there degradation in the system? And that needs to be brought in and included in the lubrication survey process. In this slide, we're going to capture what I think are some keys that people maybe don't put the importance on or don't think about. Measure and record operating temperatures on ongoing basis. Don't just take a temperature or make an assumption. Even if you have a temperature recording, a pickup on a piece of equipment, oftentimes people become just lulled into confidence that that meter is reading it, and you're not looking at the data or the slight change. So you measure and record the operating temperature. Document the operating conditions. Is it dirty? Is it wet? Is there some kind of chemical contamination potential? Vibration data, if it's there, capture the vibration data and use it. Include it in understanding the potential effect on the lubrication of these components. Look at the contamination reports. Usually they're part of the used oil analysis. Look at the report, understand if there's some frequency or some type of change there, some type of opportunity to improve filtration, or is there no issue at all? And just have that for the future when you can capture a change. And you're walking through the plant, and we can see a gentleman up here in the corner of the slide. Capture operating conditions. Look at unusual circumstances. Here we have someone with gloves and grease being applied by hand. Probably not safe, but as well probably not the most effective way of ensuring a long life of that particular operation, or of the gentleman for that matter. Record unusual odors, fogs, vapors, environment, unusual conditions, because all of these will impact or can impact or affect the lubricant. If it's a grease, it could cause the grease to break down if it's got a particular fog coming in that attacks the thickener. And now you've got an issue where you should increase the grease lubrication. If possible, use photographs to record improvement opportunities. Take a picture of the gentleman doing things like this, and then it's not a thing to harass or punish. Make it a reward, actually, and say, here's an opportunity. This is going to be a reward to the company. It's going to be a reward to the plant. It's going to be a reward to the individual to change from a particular unsafe or ineffective process. Hello? In complex cases, record and provide photographic lube instructions. So this is the next step from taking a picture of something. Now we're going to take a picture of how it should be done. And this is a reference or a learning tool for the person that's going to be doing it ongoing, or the person that does it infrequently at holidays or backup. Document storage and dispensing methods and lubricant housekeeping for improvement opportunities. Here we have pictures of probably not the best, but it's certainly not the worst examples I've seen of lube storers or filter storers. Here we have filters just tossed on top of a box in a dirty corner. You can see the drum covered in dust. I'm sure that dust doesn't help that filter in operation. And again, We need to document these so that it's part of the survey, it's part of the opportunity for improvement. Record lubricant containers. Get the containers, get the sizes, find out what is the most useful size to fit the application. Is it easier to have pails rather than a drum that sits in a remote location, have a pail that can be stored in a cabinet, a clean cabinet near the application point? And make sure these are kept organized. Give the recommendations to have some form of organization, some form of frequency of reordering, and some type of inventory system. Implement lubricant consolidation opportunities. It used to be that doing a survey was really only an opportunity for consolidating down to 1 or 2 lubricants. Sometimes that doesn't make sense, but sometimes those opportunities are there, and you consolidate to a better quality lubricant. You have one particular synthetic gear oil, for example, that can fit all applications. Then there's less chance of cross-contamination, misapplication. Develop plans for unique labeling, methods of dispensing, sealed dispensing, and sealed storage containers to prevent the misapplication and contamination we talked about. So I'm going to summarize here what to the development phase. Then we're going to talk in the next step about how the whole process might work. But a summary of the lubrication development phase. Develop the equipment list, conduct the lubrication survey, document observations and conditions, select the lubricants that you want in the operation or that are correct for the application, consolidate if it's applicable, and develop a lubrication manual or a database. So we've completed what I will call is the very minimum of what you can call a lube survey. You captured the most useful information, you captured the key, and you've also captured go forward or development opportunities. Purchase necessary lubrication equipment. Don't be afraid to not use coffee cans or old quart jars, if they still exist. Get proper sealed lubrication equipment. Get proper bypass filtration carts. Spend the time and the energy to purchase necessary equipment instead of make do. Otherwise, a lot of the benefits that go forward will be lost. Set lubrication preventative maintenance frequency and stick to the frequency or update the frequencies as needed. And continue, as I said, update and record. Don't lose valuable information. In the past, people have just walking through the plants, doing a check, use their hands to do temperature as opposed to accurate. But even those hand temperature checks can tell you, hey, something's getting hot. Capture that. Now make it part of your next maintenance schedule, the next day, next shift, and do something to improve. There are several, and we're going to, at this point, we're going to talk about the options that operations have. And I'm going to say there are 3 true options for a lube survey that doesn't end up, or lubrication and equipment survey that doesn't end up in a drawer or on a shelf collecting dust. First is a lubrication audit. Usual time in most plants is 1 to 3 days on site with a consultant or using the resources of a dedicated personnel. Don't make it part of their job because it won't happen. Their focus will be whatever the main part of their job is or had been, and the lube survey will get lost. So 1 to 3 days commitment. Review current lubrication scheduling, routines, knowledge of equipment. Identify potential improvements. This is what you're going to get with just basically a lubrication audit. Improve reliability. Review lubricants used and document general applications in a general sense. You're not capturing specifics with this, but you are capturing specific improvements, just not specific lubrication usually. Identify opportunities to reduce cost in the lubricants, whether through consolidation, getting a better quality lubricant that can cover more than one application. Lubricant life, provide a move to best practices for equipment lubrication and contamination control. Identify opportunities to include advanced synthetic or premium lubrication. And review current storage and handling practices, like the example in the picture. Move forward with something that's going to prevent the lubricant from being the point of contamination in the storage. Examine lubricant and filter disposal practices and identify opportunities to reduce waste. Then what I will call, number 2, lubrication survey, usually a week or more on site. This is going to be a longer term commitment because you're going to capture every lubrication point, every potential. You're going to try and capture every potential problem, includes all part of the first option that we just discussed, and specific requirements at lubrication points, not general requirements. Document key equipment, specific lubrication requirements, and verification of correct lubrication. That means going back to the original recommendation, check the viscosities, check the grease, and actually do some measurement calculations. Use identified key equipment operation parameters. Know what the temperatures are. Determine what the makeup rate is, how much lubricant is applied at what interval. System changeout requirements so that you're prepared to have the lubricant there, you're not substituting inappropriately. And determine and recommend opportunities for application of best practices. That's industry best practices that you're getting from the outside resource or the expertise that you have in-house. Go back to the historic documents, current oil analysis, test intervals, make sure that the sample is accurate, make sure the sample is at the right interval, and that you're not just wasting money on oil analysis. You're collecting from the right point and using the right data. And this will assist in proactively updating your maintenance schedule. Identify opportunities for lubrication training, in-plant lubrication documentation changes, MSDS, know the potential hazards and will help feed into having the right protective equipment and processes available. And then what we're going to call is a full ongoing cultural change. This is the third option, ongoing lubricant management program. Time requirement, as with the second option, so it's a long-term commitment, week or more, plus you're going to have reviews at some frequency. Require an additional commitment to achieve best practices in all maintenance areas. Using a full audit, so you have your survey or audit, you're now building on that, and you're going to assess your processes, the plant processes, against industry standards, something like the Tompkin scoreboard for maintenance excellence, using 18 major functional areas, or a similar scoreboard. How, you're better in your operation. How are we compared to the industry? How are we against a scoreboard? Assess for improvement opportunities using an evaluation criteria. In this particular case, 200 different areas. That's a really intense microscopic examination of the process. But this may not be possible today, but this should be the goal of a premier maintenance operation. This is where you're going to capture the savings. You're going to get the right lubricants in place, and maybe there's an investment. Usually there's an investment of time and money up front, but long-term, huge, huge savings. Much broader approach than only a lubrication and lubrication practices survey. The goal is to establish, it's a cultural change. Everyone, you're focused on your profits. You're focused on the operation to produce a particular product. Now you're focused on making sure that the best processes are in place to provide long-term reliability in the equipment. Make sure that money isn't wasted and time isn't wasted. Many areas assign teams with specific maintenance-related metrics and targets. Combined teams meet on a monthly quarterly or annual basis. Annual is a little too long, but monthly or quarterly, and dedicated facilitator, someone, and in some cases, it's someone like myself, mini commercial, I guess, sorry. But you need someone that can come in and facilitate the group, pull them together, not necessarily part of the culture on a day-to-day basis. It's important to stay focused at that meeting or at these reviews, and that's sometimes important to have an outside facilitator. Not always, but a suggestion. The facilitator, in the meantime, issues quarterly progress reviews, identifies activities and issues on the go forward that they're going to review at the next meeting. Enhances required the seminars and training to bring in the right resources if you need to do some development or training at one of these meetings or attach it to the meeting. We address the gaps and achieve closure on the identified opportunities. That number 3 option is a cultural shift in many cases, and it's a cultural and dedicated commitment. But this will definitely give you the biggest savings and the biggest opportunity to go forward. And I guess that's where we end the discussion on lubrication survey programs. We have questions, we can talk about it. Here's a mini picture. The goal of lubrication management, right lubricant, the right quality, applied in the right place at the right time in the right quantity, handled and stored in the right health and safety practices, and disposed of in the right environmental manner. Thank you for listening. Do you have any?
Okay, thank you, Lauren. Yeah. Thank you very much. We have 4 questions for you.
Sure.
The first one is, sometimes reducing failures means less need for maintenance workers. So how do you get them to buy into improving lubrication?
It means less. I missed the less what?
The question is, sometimes reducing failures means less need for maintenance workers. So how do you get them to buy into the improving lubrication? So it means by improving lubrication, they have less things to do, so they lose their job.
They lose their job. They lose their overtime. They lose things of that nature. And yes, sometimes that's there, but you need to include, when you're going into these programs, we need to understand those are concerns. Those are sometimes hidden in the complaint, but the value there is that person's job really important? The answer is yes. So now we need to give a benefit for documenting and upgrading. And I know in many opportunities is like we can have less overtime, less is lost, but that's part of the culture. And so a benefit needs to be built in. Some operations will give a bonus of some type. If you put in 5 suggestions, you get a dollar value bonus, or you get dinners for the family. Sometimes family being brought into this situation can be very important. So you can have a dinner for the family at a pizzeria. But those are ways of keeping people interested, and that's, I think, the best I can suggest there. There may be other more creative answers. Yes.
Okay. So the next question is, you mentioned something about lube routes in the plant.
Yes.
How do you define the lube routes?
Well, in an established plant, there usually are routes that the maintenance or lubrication tech has, and you need to look at how, when you walk through the plant, what's your lube route, and do you understand the basis at that point? And then you look at the plant flow or the operation flow and compare that operation flow with the way people have been lubricating the system, and is it logical or are you missing something? So the lube route, you take what exists, and then you build on that based on a logical flow, or where the store warehouse is for the lubricants and the filter supplies. In a brand new operation, you just start off with the operation of flow, and you can document it, whatever is logical. But it's usually a mix of logic to current practices.
Okay, thank you very much. The third question is, these days, a lot of OEMs are involved in one plant, and each OEM has its own lubrication chart. So at the end of the day, the maintenance has different type of lubricants, different type of oils and greases. So managing this became a huge task. How to approach this problem and come up with an efficient solution?
Okay, that's a very good point, and that really comes into the lubrication focus, having a focused personnel and then a team, and the team would incorporate all of the different suppliers, the different recommendations, and you get to sit down around the table and to come to something, because ultimately the operation is most important, not the supplier, and not the, even though they like to think they are, but it's the focus for the operation. So you sit down as a team, you understand there's some benefit, you have to identify the benefit, whether that just be more sales or sales of an upgraded product or something, and you come to a consolidated list that makes sense to the operation. So it's important to come together, not work in silos, but come together in these meetings. And that what I would suggest is the way to address that is all parties come together, everybody makes their point, and then you come to a consensus.
Okay. The next question is, it says, for surveys, what do you find is needed the most? Wrong loop, too long, too often, too much, too little, contamination, others. So
trying to understand here. What is the most observed?
Well, the question is for surveys, what do you find needed the most? Wrong loop, too long, too often, too much, too little, contamination, others.
Okay.
Do you want to elaborate on your question, or Lauren, you are good?
I think I kind of understand what do you find? I find most often when I go in, definitely contamination is an issue, but usually contamination, you walk into the lubrication storage area or wherever the lubricant is handled, that's a key issue. Then too much. I think those would be the first two in a plant that's never had a development or a growth in lubrication area. And then you work down the list, you find the problems where you start to have something that I don't know the whole list you've got there, but then you'll find an area where people are putting up with a failure at some frequency where they needn't have any failure at all. They just didn't have the right application of a solution. So we'd start off with contamination, then too much, and maybe infrequent. The focus isn't on the lubricants. You've got some a person with responsibility for repairing things. It's their job to do the lubrication. Obviously, the focus is going to be they want to repair things, not do the lubrication. So kind of work down the list that way. And so I would say contamination top of the list and too much lubricant is second. Does that answer? Sorry.
Yeah, Ken, is it the answer of your question, or you want to have more explanation? I think Ken is mute. Okay, so the last question is, what percentage of plants have trained and dedicated lubricators rather than anyone? That's the question.
Okay,
so
what percent of the plant?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I would say if we went back a number of years ago, actually you went back a long time, there was always a dedicated lube guy, but he was the older guy that had been around, and this was his pre-retirement reward. Times have changed, and now I would say 50, 60. That's not high number, not like I'd like to see, but 50 to 60% of the operations that I'm involved with would have dedicated lubrication people that are somewhat knowledgeable. I'm going to say they have taken courses and they do have ongoing training of some nature. And so that still leaves 40 to 45% of the plants out there that need a better job to capture the savings and the benefit of this. Right.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So there is no other questions. Do you want to add anything else on it, or?
No, I'm happy at this point. If there's any questions, please feel free to contact me. And I'm always available to help find the right
Thank you very
solution.
much.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a great learning for me myself, especially about that lube route, because we have a customer looking for that. So I'm trying to learn and help them.
Yep.
So 9:57, we are going to start the next talk at 10. So we have 3 minutes. If somebody wants to pick a water or stretch the legs, we will come back in 3 minutes. Okay? Thanks.
Okay. Based on its own.